think it's recording again. Hopefully it recorded the first part too.
All right, I'm trying to make this thing stay up. All right, here we go. Okay, so yeah, so after that night that I felt super unsafe and like some other things happened and got me kicked out of the Cove, that was like the end of that crisis. The treasure was like finding an apartment and that being a really good situation and just like super good learning situation. Everything about it was pretty treasure-like, I guess. Return. Okay, so this is where it's probably going to get a little like abstract because return for me was like when I was living at that apartment is when I like got sick after like 6 months. And then I had to return back to the Cove for a few days to go back to my hometown for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a really big, important lesson that I did not have anyone still to rely on. So that brought, like, it kind of goes full circle to new life because it brought me back to the Cove and I just kind of went back through that cycle once more, but like with way more wisdom and way brand new eyes, like, if that makes sense. Like, I just knew exactly how to zoom through the program or like how I thought I should. And basically I'm getting through it. And like this time that I'm getting set up, it's like nothing can fail me. So I guess that's like new life. Can explain that as easily as possible. Also, new life and like resolution, the moving forward part, I really want to try to highlight me leaving here to the next place somehow. Like, it'll be good because I'll be editing and getting that done, but maybe I can like get a few shots of like maybe like me moving into the next place, or like even if it's just like my stuff packed up or something, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, I think that would be really cool to show. Because like I said, the returning back home, like everything went in the exact same cycle as it did before. So it's like leveling up. So the resolution is also just like I wrote new levels and like new wisdom, I guess. Status quo ending, like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, oh, I mean, that idea of status quo, at least in this context, is like, what's your everyday life? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, maybe before your everyday life, you know, whatever it is that in the context of this story you're gonna say about like your where you came from, right? Like your status quo was, you know, like it wasn't really that safe, and like, but you know, you know, like what your day looked like, and then so now
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, so now your status quo becomes, hey, you know, maybe, I mean, and this is like, when you talk about your treasure, like, I think it can be something maybe more personal growth oriented. Like, you know, now maybe you're alone, but, you know, now you have the strength to build new relationships or something like that. You know what I mean? So your status quo now is like independence and personal strength and like stability and all those things. So it's like, yeah, because so like status quo doesn't mean like, yeah, it's more like just painting the picture of what your everyday looks like. And then your hero's journey is like how your status quo from the beginning changes at the end.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because before my daily life was like, you know, working, going to work, getting drunk with my friends at the bars, like getting involved with really bad relationships and just bad friendship cycles in my hometown. And then now my status quo, like you said, is independence, strength, and stability. Like that truly is.
And you know, maybe your status quo now, it can still totally be a launching point for the next thing, but it's just like showing how in this chapter of your story, like that growth and that change has happened, you know? Because yeah, like you can go on to have new different types of relationships or even better stuff, but it's like, yeah, just in this chapter, like how's the status quo change and shift for you?
Yeah, because like, no, that makes perfect sense. Because now it's like, I was doing a reading the other day, and it pretty much said like, basically you've gone through a rites of passage, like you have all this wisdom and all this knowledge. So like basically if you face any like heartbreak or like major disappointments, grief and sorrow, like it'll probably be like, I don't want it to make it sound so harsh, but it's like it will be my fault because like now I know what to do. So it's like, I don't know, I just have a new sense of like everything. I don't know how to explain it at this
No,
level.
I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. It's not like, it's not even in a punishing way, right? But it's like, it's just like now you're in control of yourself.
Yeah.
Like what
Oh
happens.
yeah, it's like that with knowledge comes responsibility kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that makes sense.
But it's very positive to me in my mind, and it could feel, and that's, I think that's such an important thing to even touch on, because I think a lot of people go through that without realizing it in like different ways.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. And I mean, I think that's like a powerful lesson, and that's like a really like a beautiful and valuable like treasure. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. I dig it. That's very helpful.
Cool. Wow. Like it's pretty. You know, not to say that there won't be things that move around, but yeah, like it's pretty. I mean, and obviously it's your own story, but it's pretty impressive how you like were able to just like click right into like, oh, okay, I see how this journey happens. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, so yeah, I think all that sounds really good, and especially like some of the things that you brought up, because I was like thinking like, oh, who's your mentor? You know what I? But obviously that's because I don't know your story as well as you know your own story. But yeah, like I think yeah, your girlfriend and her.
You do mean for like, yeah. I'm sorry, it like stopped for a second.
Oh yeah,
But you did mean like when you said mentor, you were talking about the assistant part, right?
yeah. The second
That's
beat.
yeah.
I think
So
you said
that's,
it's super smart.
you like that? I mean, for me, it's like that's where it's like it's falling within the like structure, but it's not like, because what was the assistance wasn't necessarily mentorship, but like it was like, like
Well, and this
it's
is
hard to explain.
she was like a catalyst, right? And she was your partner.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
like I think that's why, you know, like you can take, and that's what makes every hero's journey unique. And I think in that way, like this idea of a partner like love is compelling, you know what I mean? And it's like maybe it's young and naive and that's why it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, oh, you chose a mentor, but she turns out to, you know, and this, to put it back into the idea of the structure, like, oh, she was like a false mentor, you know what I mean? And
I
so
mean, it's so
that becomes the
interesting
battle.
because, yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because like I actually went into it feeling like it was so weird, because she looked at me as a mentor, but I looked at her as like a mentor. It
Hmm.
was such a weird balance, but I really like that, like just that thought, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, and she probably told the story in a different way. It's like you, I mean, you two found each other, right? And you found something in each other, and you maybe didn't have anybody else, you know? And so you're like, well, this is our best chance, you know? And in the end, I guess you weren't each other's mentors, but, you know, it's like you
Yeah.
bond and you grow from that.
Hmm.
And in that period of time, you were, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no. She actually gets a lot, she will be getting lots of accolades in this thing, because she was actually like pivotal in my growth journey. So it
Yeah.
works. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I mean, just because things don't like work out with people doesn't mean they're not
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah, no. I think it was extremely valuable. Because I only said that because I mentioned her mom as like the assistants, but she wasn't really that. Like
Mm.
she was just like, yeah, you can stay at our house. She wasn't even at her own house, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like I
those are
think
parts of the stories that don't matter
having
anymore.
having your, you know, your ex as in that role, like totally makes sense. And then, yeah, she
Mhm.
kind of falls away from that, but
I like it.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you said it, I was like, oh yeah, of course, genius. Like,
Yeah. And I was thinking like, for the stories that I have, because I actually got a story of another girl who's new, and she's just a really cool, like, she's on the other end of the spectrums when it comes to like stories that are being told. Like other people are kind of like in turmoil, but she's just, I love her story. It's so awesome. Like I caught it perfectly. Like we were outside, like just having cigarettes, like out in the smoking area. And then she just moved in. She looked really cool. And I would like gave her my, like, my cigarette and was like, here, smoke it. It looks cool on camera. And she just has this energy. Like I was kicked out of home, and you know what? I was like, fuck it. Like, let's just start life. Like, let's just do life, whatever. You know, I'm tired of living in fear. Like, she was just like going in about it. And I'm just like, yes. So I think I want to have it to where it's like, I'm not going to like focus so hard on people's story, but I'm going to show it as just kind of like, I guess, my encounters on this whole like hero's journey.
Yeah.
And since it's mostly about me anyways.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be like, because if there's this idea of like the status quo world and then there's the special world, it's like, yeah, this journey through you and like homelessness is your special world, right? So it's like, oh, you meet all these like colorful characters along the way kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Okay. Well, yep. I'm glad it makes sense then. I'm like, that's the best I got. Try to figure out how to use all the stuff. It's some good stuff. It all tells the story. How it all happened just right.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it totally does make sense that I mean, if not you like moving into a new place or something, like you need some kind of final, like,
Yeah.
okay, this is the next
like something hopeful and like amazing, so they can be like, oh my God, like we witnessed her go from here to there. How awesome.
Yeah. And that's your beautiful circle journey. Yay.
Mm-hmm. Completion, and it happened like perfect timing.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, well that was literally like the first thing on the list, but we can either save this for if you I don't know how you're feeling. We could go through the rest of this stuff, just like development stuff, if you think it's going to be helpful just to learn different tools, or we can save it for Wednesday. Or
Well, let's see. Story development tools. I mean, I guess we may as well start fresh on Wednesday. I mean, look at it real quick. Card outlines. Was this what? Oh no, yeah, there's some different stuff. On it. Oh wow, okay, there's a lot of info. Well, I mean, maybe you could tell me like a overview of what we'll be doing, but like my brain does feel like it's like crashed, I guess. So we could like pick it up on Wednesday with the rest of it.
okay, that's cool. I mean, basically the overview is the other. So the other. Well, and then I guess we didn't really touch on 3-act structure. So I'll touch on that really quick. 3-act structure is kind of like, I guess it's a way to break down all the rest of the story that's happening, but and there's, I mean, like I say here, right? It's a model used for narrative fiction that divides the story into 3 parts, often called the setup, confrontation, or resolution, or like the beginning, middle, and end, to just be really like, lay person about it. There's also a 5-act structure that's just more like finely breaks down like the different parts, like in the 3 acts. So just to be like aware of that. And then, like I say right here, it's like studying, mastering the 3-act structure is like, it's literally everything about like growing and becoming a writer. You can always get better at it. But I think like just always returning to the idea of like, okay, like what's the beginning of my story, my setup, what's the inciting incident that like launches my hero into like the meat of their journey, which is all the conflict that leads to that. And this is where you can kind of see like how the hero's journey and the 3-act structure like align with each other.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, basically the 2nd act is starting from the I forget what they call it. It's the fourth point right before the approach. You have it in your
It's trials.
the trials, yeah. So like the trials start, and it's like all of that leading up to the treasure is the second act, and then the third act is basically like the resolution of all of that. So it's just kind of like another way to conceptualize and break apart the hero's journey, and it's kind of like it's just a more standard way that like writers in television, and I mean maybe definitely in plays and maybe in like books, how they like talk about story and like moving it forward. So it's more like knowing the 3-act structure is really more about like being able to communicate with other writers about like, okay, well, what's your inciting incident? Why do I care? Like, what's your hook? You know, all that is like first act stuff where it's like, oh, but I don't understand your world. Like when people are giving you that kind of feedback, they're talking about like your first act and like, or, you know, they're like, your inciting incident comes too late. It's like people want, you know, in very conventional storytelling, they want your hero to get launched into whatever their journey is as pretty much as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, the end of the third act, or I'm sorry, the end of the first act and all through the second, it's all about like raising the stakes. Like what makes this situation more and more and more impossible and dire to overcome. And then at the end of the second act, because that's like the, what makes that dramatic resolution and that dramatic turn is like the facts that like, oh, the stakes are so high. Like maybe for you, it's like, oh, you know, you've been through this breakup, you've gotten sick, you know, you end up back where you are again. And now you're in isolation, you know, like possibly facing death, you know, or facing a disease that's like, you know, like all these things just stacking up against you, like all odds seem impossible. She's never going to get to be independent and feel free, you know, and she's such a beautiful, and then also I think there's a level of that. It's, oh, but then it's such a beautiful soul. We want to see her succeed, right? So it's like all of those things like leading up to that capturing of the treasure is kind of like coincides with where the second act would end, right? And then it's like, whoa, like she did it, yes, you know, and then it's kind of like in that third act is you know, just the triumph of that. And I think like in maybe modern film and modern storytelling, that third act is not quite as long as it used to be. Like it's not as celebratory and not as like, oh, the hero, as it maybe has been in the past. But you know, that's it's really just about showing what that change is for the hero, you know, and what how that status quo has changed. It's maybe changed from shitty to, you know, like
I think mine will be like simple and like kind of just sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet and simple.
Yeah. So that's I guess the reason that I would want to talk about those two things. It's just like seeing how the hero's journey coincides with like this idea of like act structure.
Yeah. No, that's good. I thought it would be harder to grasp, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And there's this video if you want. There's a Hulu man talking about 3-act structure.
Yeah, let's do it.
And then we'll maybe save the development tools for. Well, actually, there's just two that I want to just touch on for you, and then we can kind of end on the video. The card outlines might be really good for you. It's like taking note cards basically, or just pieces of paper, whatever you got. Or even it can be, you know, on your computer. Can you hear me? Are you frozen?